This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island.
Good morning, William.
Morning,
Good morning.
Joann.
It's coffee today. It's not wine. It's coffee because I don't drink wine in the morning, William. I really don't.
Well, I have a green cup. I won't confess that I have soda in it because it's past coffee time for me, but go ahead. What's up, girl?
Yeah, your coffee time is significantly earlier than mine. Well, what's up? Well, hi everybody. We're 3 weeks to election day. Continuing our conversation here about all things political, all things important to this election, and all things important to people. So glad for everyone to join us here with William John Cox, the one, the only.
Hello,
Go
Joann.
ahead, William. Introduce yourself.
Hello. Here's as we often say here. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to the people.
Cheers to the people.
And hang around, folks. Don't leave us. And if you do, please subscribe before you leave. But anyway, here's to you, and we're here to talk about you today. People. In a way, I think that's what we may have in mind is the people and the rights of the people.
Rights of the people.
So
yes, imagine.
Where are you going to
imagine? Let's revisit our rights. Well, we're in full swing. We got 3 weeks to the election. There's a lot to talk about, of course, this week, but we're thinking that today we might just kind of have a general discussion about our rights of liberty, because this question underpins some of the more, fundamental issues of this election, but also, issues on which the vote may very well turn. Because I saw a statistic yesterday on the news saying that 45% of voters say that reproductive rights are an issue that will be a deciding issue for them in this election. That's a
pretty big number.
It's a pretty big number, especially so 45%. So it's a fundamental thing, and I think for me, I'm very much pro-choice, and the Dobbs decision was really a huge moment for me in my life, because I actually was born right around the time that Roe v. Wade came down from the Supreme Court. So my whole adult life, I've understood that I have reproductive freedom, and now I see the generation behind me does not. And the election, the stories coming out of various states about women experiencing these horrible, having these horrible, tragic, sort of non-viable pregnancy issues happening in parking lots of emergency rooms. It just makes you feel like all of a sudden, you understood that you had this equal rights, or you had rights in a way. To see them, it's such a experience of like seeing them pull back, and seeing that this thing that seems so fundamental.
Well, how would it affect you here in California? See, the question might be, Texas has the right to enact whatever laws they want to. And that's where women are dying in the parking lot, because the physicians are afraid to treat them in their pregnancies, because because the normal, standard of treatment is to abort the fetus that or whatever. But in any case, that if you are a woman here in California and you have a job opportunity in Houston, Texas, are you going to take it? If you're a young woman,
no.
I'm just saying,
yeah, right. So to make it, that's in other words,
it does in fact have an effect on, in a way, interstate commerce and so forth. So
that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And if you look out, so that's one big issue that's on everyone's mind. But if you look out across the Project 2025 agenda, which whatever Donald Trump says is clearly a blueprint for these people who were in his administration, are going to be in it today, wrote the thing. You see, different groups, the LGBTQ, and the ability to get married, and so many fundamental things
I
that,
just had another thought, if I could interrupt.
please, but I'm
Sort
just
of
saying,
like
let me finish. I'm just saying that you see these fundamental things that are really under threat in a way that we haven't had in recent elections in that way. And so I really feel like this is a fundamental issue in this election, but it's kind of boiling under the surface. Not the abortion piece, but other things are kind of boiling under the surface. And I'm hoping that this really is an issue that a lot of people vote on. You know, that's what I'm hoping,
Well, you,
especially those groups who will be most affected.
well, what you mentioned something that actually touched me in terms of having worked the Holocaust case and
Mhm.
seeing what happened in Hitler's government is that Hitler's government consisted of the stooges that he had that hung on to him during the time, that he was, beginning and starting and clinging on. And they were the ones who became the key of his government. That's what you have with Trump today. Is that what you had are in his first administration, you had the basic Republicans all rallied together and tried to fill all those top spots, with responsible people who looked aghast at what they were dealing with and regularly left. But what you had were the stooges that you were talking about, the ones that were carrying the extra ties around or whatever, who are now promoted. Or is his name Miller? Who's suddenly been promoted up to being in positions of power in this new administration. These aren't leading lights, and leading lights, that as I
Right.
understand
They're the
it.
people who have no spine and are
Right.
willing to.
So anyway, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to
No, no,
interrupt you,
no. But you know what? I'll make a tiny digression there because I do find while comparisons to Hitler are instructive in a lot of ways, they
get
also
that.
turn people off entirely because they don't really. So I struggle with that because I do see that it's an interesting thing to point out, but I do think it completely because people think it's completely polemical to
Yeah,
like compare him.
I agree as to it is that it was the incompetence factor is what I was illustrating more
I
than
know.
anything else. I'm sorry.
I know. No, no,
You're
no.
right.
You don't have to apologize. I
No,
just
no.
pointed out because it is an instructive comparison, but at the same time, it comes across a certain way. So that's where my comms brain comes on. But anyway, so bottom line is I thought, you know, you know, to continue in our of if you out there, and in particular William Cox here, if you out there were to become president, what would you do to protect and shore up these rights that rather surprisingly for some of us, depending on when we were born, are all of a sudden under grave threat or have been rolled back. I mean, to me, this is something that is I think should be more of a fundamental issue in how people vote. I mean, I was actually encouraged to see that thing about the 45%, that this is a deciding issue for 45% of the electorate, about with respect to reproductive freedom. But I don't know if that, once again, I'm not sure that that's going to be on the margin what makes the difference in these swing states and so on and so forth. So, but anyway, what would you do,
Well,
William, to shore
again,
up these rights that are being eroded rather quickly?
well, as always, I would look at it from a policy point of view. And I mean, what are
Mhm.
going to be the policies of the government? And one of the policies of the government looking at the issues that you were just talking about is the role of the president as being essentially the chief law enforcement officer of the country, because that's his oath is to execute the laws of the country,
Or her oath.
or her oath. Thank you very much. Well, yes, and indeed, and to do so faithfully, and so that is as the as in that role is how I would approach the policy of the rights of women, of minorities, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Hispanics or whoever. wherever.
LGBTQ,
In other
yeah.
words, instead of just saying all lives matter, it is not that all lives matter. It has to do with looking at our rights. And there's a important historical questions involved here. And that is that when our forefathers and mothers fought for our rights of liberty, that's what it was about. It was this concept of liberty from the French liberty. It is the right to be left alone by the government, and that's what
Thank
it's
you.
all about. It was the right to be left alone, and that's what that battle was all about. And they specifically did not, put they excluded religion in the First Amendment, the practice of religion, because they wanted you to be free of all of those
Separation
things.
of church and
And
state.
then they
Yes.
were careful enough, even though they enumerated those rights were against the federal government in a way. Those are the federal charter of the Bill of Rights, but they retained their rights in the Ninth and 10th Amendment. They retained all other rights, to themselves, to the states, and then to themselves individually. And so those are the essential rights of liberty that were never surrendered with the implementation of this Constitution. See, this goes back to the Declaration of Independence. Over here, we declared our independence, and we said some very significant things when we declared our independence as to who and what we were and what we were all about. And those rights, what we said in that declaration, were not taken away with the implementation of the Constitution. In fact, they were explicitly retained, there. So that's what I would argue as the chief law enforcement officer of this country before the Supreme Court, when I'm arguing cases, is that you don't have to go into court on a piecemeal basis. See, that's the whole problem with the rights of women, is that their rights have always had to be advanced one by one under the 14th Amendment, equal protection. And
because we never passed the ERA.
Because it was never passed. So, but you have the same sort of situation for the rights in all other categories, whether gay rights or any rights, but particularly reproductive rights. Looking at it, particularly from that standpoint, and those are those essential rights of liberty are what would govern my actions in that role in terms of determining the policies of the government as it relates to minorities. That would be the overall policy.
And I love the fact that this is rooted in originalism,
Exactly.
which we have several justices who consider themselves originalists. So, this is where the Supreme Court, where public opinion and public trust in the Supreme Court starts to really erode too, because for me, I don't see that they're being intellectually honest. And these
Not at all.
The Supreme Court is supposed to be, these are the titans. These are the legal titans of our time that should be, at the very least, intellectually honest with what, So if you're an originalist, I don't understand how you can sign on to something where you're saying that a person doesn't get to make a decision about their own body. How?
Well, that's what it's all about. Is that you have to go before the court and make a case. You have to make your case before that court and then lose before that court, and then you go out, as I said the last time, you stand on the steps of the Supreme Court and you tell the public what just happened inside, and you say, listen, folks, it's time to maybe reorganize the court.
Well, there's that, but then there's also, what about, finally passing the Equal Rights Amendment? What about that? And what about, expanding perhaps the Equal Rights Amendment beyond women, so that it's, there's gay rights and other things that are
I think
really
that's what I was just saying, Joann. What I was just saying is that the policy of the Justice Department would be that the 14th Amendment, equal protection and due process applies to all people under all circumstances in all locations within this country. So there's no longer any question of having to qualify through any state or through any different state laws as it applies. It is just that simply every person in this country has equal protection and due process under 100% of the time, at all times, and at all places, and that includes all people, and that is in order to implement this original rights of liberty to be left alone by the government.
Yes.
That's the key, is that you would be stepping in to keep the government from interfering with something.
And that, I'll put my media comms hat on just for a second, which is that, I saw, one of the more brilliant things that they're doing this week on the Harris-Walz campaign is that she's gone to, Republican groups. She's had meetings I think she was in Arizona yesterday talking to Republicans who are, centrist Republicans. And, her whole thing was, people have different opinions about reproductive freedom and what those rights are. All I'm saying is it shouldn't be the government making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're saying, is it should not be the government making that decision. You can I completely respect all other, and I thought that was I think getting back to that argument, which is what you're saying as what you would do in the presidency with respect to these issues, is to just say, you've retained your rights of liberty under the 9th and 10th Amendment. It's not the government's going to come in and make this decision. It's not our place. And, it's not for us to say what's right or wrong or what you can and can't do with respect to, who you marry or, whether you're going to have a baby or not. I mean, these are fundamental things. And these aren't like the right to go out and buy a car that's the color that you want. This is like fundamental things to people's lives.
Right.
How their lives are going to pan out. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, it's not just that. At the time that Constitution was enacted, going back to the originalist, if we may, at that time, every farmer's almanac had abortion remedies in there for the farm wives in order to abort those pregnancies that would burden and perhaps destroy their families. They carried that right with them right through that time, and the only laws that existed were for the abortionist where they performed an abortion and the woman died, that there would be some remedy or some penalty at law for that, and not every state, but that was just some ancient law that was that was the law that came out of England that left this foundation there. Mm-hmm. Other than that, this was always a woman's decision, because the harsh reality was out in in every village around the world, women who had families would leave babies out, would expose babies they could not feed nor take care of to the detriment of their remaining family, and that child would either be adopted by a passing stranger or left to die. That was just
very harsh reality.
It was a harsh reality,
and
that existed.
Of course, and of course, in today's modern society, of course, there's obviously other services and things available, but it just illustrates the point. This may seem like a really elementary question, but I'm going to ask it. If we're talking about originalism, being the thing, I mean, according to originalists, women didn't really have rights back when, not in any sort of, in a philosophical way, returning the rights of liberty, but a lot of times these groups that we're talking about were not what they're calling protected classes at the time. So if you're an originalist, you'd be like, well, actually, that actually doesn't matter back then, because they didn't have, they were basically property, as were Black people, as were so what's that? I know this is a facile argument maybe, but if we're going to take the originalist thing, we might as well go all the way to the.
Well, I've already answered the question, because the rights of liberty predate the Constitution that they're purporting to interpret as originalist. Do you see
But
what
do
I'm
those
saying?
rights, but were those rights
In
of
other words, it goes
liberty?
back to the same point. Just because the existing laws at that time, favored men and did not empower women to vote, perhaps, or to own property or to do various
Exactly.
things, and under the laws of succession, they were almost essentially possessed by their husbands. Those were the laws, but those were not the original underlying rights of liberty. Their rights of liberty were being infringed upon by that society and its laws and so forth. So
those original rights of liberty applied to everyone.
Everybody.
They applied to women. They applied to
slaves,
people who were enslaved.
To every single the rights of liberty are more than human rights. I mean, that's originally, if you go back to the Declaration of Independence, these are the inalienable rights. These are rights that are before they can be taken away. These are original inherent rights
that apply to people who are not white men.
As we bring it today into the 21st century, is that what these are universal rights. Wherever you go in this infinite universe, these are the rights that are the rights of liberty, because without these rights of liberty, for us to live free and independent without the interference of government to the greatest extent possible, we never achieve our potential. We lose potential under repressive governments. We gain potential under free governments. I mean, the economy shows that. As we look back over our economy, that's just really the way it is. When you have a repressive government where the rich or the powerful try to take wealth out of the economy, it dies. When you have an economy where it's tried to give people abilities to live and so forth, the economy thrives. It's just.
And I would argue, just taking the other point of view there, or to just buttress that with the other point of view a little bit, is that where economies are overregulated, you also have the same
issue. That's another story. I don't believe in government regulation. I think government should establish presumptions. They should study situations, and they should establish presumptions, and they are rebuttable presumptions. But if you have the situation that exists, it's like a regulation in a way. But if you're injured and you violated that standard, that you establish standards, and as long as you follow, but if you violate their standard, there's a presumption of negligence in a way.
It's a rebuttable presumption.
It's a rebuttable presumption. But it's just a way of establishing things that you should and you shouldn't do. And we do that, excuse me. We do that by court decisions in a way over time. You only make coffee this hot, you only do this and you do this and you do this. You can do all of this stuff in a presumptive way if you think policy. If you try to think ahead and you try to think about situations and you study that within your area of knowledge and expertise, whether it be in transportation, whether it be, in healthcare and in all these other areas that you establish standards in, it would be to the highest standards, academic standards of studying and looking at it. And then that's what it becomes, is that it becomes a rebuttable presumption. I mean, at least that's the way I would look at it. Certainly if you have that and it exists, you would have certain circumstances that would be so egregious that the government could step in under criminal negligence, essentially, and prosecute it as criminal negligence. I would say, but that's different than stepping in as a regulatory agency. And that's where the originalists have so much trouble, is all of these regulatory agencies that exist.
As somebody who works for a regulatory agency, I might have different ideas, but that might be but it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. I guess for me, I just want to go back and just reconfirm that the inalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence were not just inalienable rights for white men.
No, no,
Okay.
no.
I mean, in terms of, getting back to this originalist sort of, argument. So,
In every pocket, in every pocket.
in every pocket. I like it. I like it.
Good.
Yeah, that's really.
Well, I'm
okay.
sorry. I don't think I can.
You don't think you can?
Well, I can't. My arms aren't long enough with my computer. Well, I have my
You got to go get another set of glasses.
Well,
it
it does say all men. It does say all men are created equal.
Yeah.
But with certain unalienable rights that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness is that pursuit of to be free. That's the pursuit of happiness is the expression of liberty in that document.
I get it. I'm just look, I just have to point out that these foundational documents were written for white men. I mean,
yes.
And it does say all men were created equal. Now, I know we can make all kinds of arguments in front of the Supreme Court that that's different. We've got 3 women who are sitting on the Supreme Court, for Christ's sake. But I'm just pointing it out with this originalist argument, why it's so insidious. So that's all. But I guess what I want to just say about this is, in terms of shoring up and protecting rights, is we look, the court, that's one of the court's main function, but we've also got a very problematic court at this point. And you said, the thing about standing on the steps and perhaps dealing directly with the court. I mean, I don't know how else you do it. But there's also Congress. I mean, there's also about passing something that's been since 80? The Equal Rights Amendment. And I think that what's happened over the last few years has illustrated the need, in a way, because in some ways it didn't pass in 1980 or whenever it was, because there was this argument that there was this other way that people were being protected, women being protected. That's no longer the case. And we see the fallibility of this sort of workaround, through the right to privacy 14th Amendment thing that has been, now it's fallen apart, and so it's really, I also think, yes, we can complain about the court and put it all at the court's feet, which is where it belongs. But at the same time, it also belongs at the feet of Congress, I think, to pass something, and also the president as well, to get something passed that does show up our
I
right.
agree entirely, Joann. That's why.
But the problem is,
the Equal Rights Amendment is
number
one on the Voters' Bill of Rights. Number one, Section 1 of the Voters' Bill of Rights is the Equal Rights Amendment. I mean, how can you have equal voting rights in this country if women don't have equal rights? I mean, I agree entirely with you. But again, at this point, it's almost a matter of interpretation, because I think enough states voted for it that would ratify it, but then a couple of states took their vote back, didn't they, or something like that?
Oh, yes, because they were doing the ratification thing. You had to get 2/3.
In seriatim, and then they extended, and there was. And
it had to happen within a certain amount of time, didn't it?
Yeah, and then it got extended, but all in all, it's just one of those things where it just should be unanimously adopted in a way as being a matter of fact. It's sort of I don't know, that's how my legal mind works. I always keep going for judicial notice. That's my favorite remedy. Just take notice of this fact,
You don't have to argue it, just take notice of it.
Yeah, just take notice of it. The facts are the facts. And with the polls are really just neck and neck, and just literally at this point, I don't know what might make a difference. I don't know. It's just it is hard, okay. For me, the way my mind works is to express something in a very simple way. and
Mhm.
as in its most reductible point, and that is that this, and again, you don't want to make comparisons to Hitler. I'm not necessarily doing that, but I'm saying let's look back at history in terms of what we are doing,
I know.
and realize that what is taking place here now is a historical moment.
Oh yeah,
In history, we're going to, in the future, we're going to look back at this time, and are those, and are people in the future, historians or whoever, going to say, oh my God, what were those people thinking about?
of
And
course
we
they
can
are.
compare that to other periods of history, which is often what people say and historians think about and write. Is that how could that have happened?
I know.
How could someone, be voted out of office, literally voted out of office, and refuse to give up, organize his own
Refuse
going
to
away
concede.
party at Andrews Air Force Base with a 21 gun salute, and refuse to attend the inauguration, and throw a temper tantrum, like a spoiled boy that he is, and that's the problem. He's a spoiled, insecure boy, with a domineering father, who was the second son. He was not the top son. There was a junior, there was ahead of him who didn't work out. So he was like second choice, but always with all of those insecurities, sent off to military school, and with all of those insecurities, just refusing to give up. And here he is, because he has just created this whole persona,
Hmm.
and it has no ring of truth to it.
But
It's a show.
it's also kind of, I mean, to me, what's so alarming about the neck and neck thing is because he seems, I mean, increasingly like is imploding in terms of any messaging, in terms of what he says at these rallies. It's just
No,
all over the place, and truly, it's not just undisciplined. It's mentally fractured. And and so instead they put Vance in front of all the tough, the New York Times thing the other day. He was being interviewed by the New York Times because, Donald Trump they're not putting him up in these higher profile sort of interviews, only Vance, because Mr. Smooth Talker. And he was asked 5 times and I loved that. He was asked 5 times, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? And he refused to answer the
right. Of
question. And
course.
so for me, I'm like, go. I mean, go ahead. That's great. I mean,
He
I think it's
auditioned for that role when he came into New York and stood behind Trump in the morning before going into court in his criminal trial. Vance was standing there at the barricade behind Trump. He made his choice. He's paid his dues, and now he's paying his dues. He's going to
yeah. So,
stand
but
there.
I mean, like, to me, there's no, I don't think we can say that if for whatever reason people vote for him and elect him, it's not like we can say it was some big charade or some big shenanigan that they were tricked. I don't know. I think it's extremely clear what has happened and what's going on, and there is a conscious decision. You know,
I think what it gets back to is what we were talking about otherwise, and that is that, in my mind at least, because the thing is that if you look at my roots and who I am and my background, I identify with these people
I know.
who will be voting for Trump, because they no longer believe in the government. They just simply don't give a shit. In a way, a lot of it is that, he's putting on a great show. To hell with him. I've been brainwashed in a way about the libtards and
Mhm.
all of this stuff over there, and comrade Kamala, and all of this, kind of brainwashing stuff is what a lot of it is. And then a lot of it is just hardcore Republicans who are not going to vote for a Democrat. And that's, what it's really coming down to is just, again, it's a failure of the government. The government is just not, it is, people are afraid of
People are too
so
alienated
many
from it.
things
Yeah.
and they don't see the government as really helping them and taking care of them. Uh, I mean, you can have Elon Musk, jumping up as a cheerleader, for behind Trump, because he's in line for billions of dollars in federal contracts or whatever. Who knows? But that's the world we live in, and I'm encouraged by a couple of things. I saw that her donations from small dollar donors, and I don't know what the dollar limit is, for under 200 perhaps of what it is, and those donations are just $248 million, and that eclipses
Obama.
it's more than double what Trump's is, and far beyond what he got in his 2016 run. He got more small dollar donations back then than he is today. Today he's relying on big money, more big money for what he's doing,
including Silicon Valley money.
So these small dollar donations are an indication of a groundswell, perhaps, of support.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging, and I guess we're just going to have to see how it plays out. I think as we wrap up, maybe just kind of last for those of us who are just riding out the last weeks of these of this campaign, any final advice for just getting through it? I mean, obviously we want everyone to vote. Please, please, please vote, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. But for me, I think what I'm trying to do is, check in, note what's happening, but just having not gorging on it, but just checking in and staying, not to try to like overwhelm myself with too much campaign news, and to keep it like a steady, diet, but not overdoing it, because I do think that it can tend to kind of just be overwhelming, the significance and where we're at right now, time-wise,
Well,
the anxiety.
yeah. Well, what I would say is, folks, the rights of liberty are not free.
Yeah.
They're not free. I mean, they are free. They are inalienable, but you have to defend them. You have to protect them. You have to keep them. And that's what you can and should do, is to recognize that with those rights is a duty to protect them. And perhaps the only way you can accept that duty and to perform that duty is, the one thing you can do is to go vote and to go through the burden of voting. And if you can do it, we do write in, we mail in our ballots. We for years we sat at the kitchen table and we do our
went through all
together.
this stuff, yeah.
But whatever it is to vote, because your vote, and this is what's important, is your vote is evidence of your consent to be governed. And what you have to accept, folks, is that your consent to be governed is conditional on good government.
No,
we don't have to consent to this government. That doesn't mean we start a revolution and have a new constitution. We don't have to. We under the Constitution we have is that we have a right to a government that takes care of us, that represents us, and I do believe that that is something that is truly universal within this country, and that is something that we can all do. Is that our vote and our participation in the government. So it's more than your vote. It is to cast an informed vote.
Mm-hmm. And that takes work.
It takes work.
It takes work. It's not just about who you like or whatever. It takes work.
And it's good work. And if you just sit in front of the TV and you either watch Fox News or MSNBC, and that's the only place you get your news or whatever, in a way, you're not necessarily satisfying your need to get information. It's hard to do. We no longer get the newspapers where we can sit in leisure and thumb through the newspapers and get information. But there is the internet, and I use the internet every day. I have a dozen places I go for information, and it's a marvelous thing. But it is work to be informed. But I think what is really work is to work at overcoming your intolerances that are hardwired into your brainstem. That hardwired into all of us. It's nothing, there's no hate, love, or anything like that involved in this. It is just hardwired into us. All of us is a certain intolerance, and we have to overcome that. And we have to, and the way to do that is to respect other people as being different than us. As
Right.
that we have to not just accept it, we have to respect their right to be different than us. And to have that government that
and to recognize that their right to be different doesn't take anything away from you.
not a thing.
It's not a zero-sum game when it comes to rights. It's an expansive
what we really
concept.
are getting in this election is a very small, hardcore minority in this country that has achieved extraordinary political power. Is trying to implement a government of their choice because they do not accept majority rule. They no matter what, they want their government under their conditions for whatever reason, whether it is faith-based or money. They want their government, and they don't care about those equal rights. They really don't.
Okay, so
that's
them.
In a way, that goes back to dirty tricks all the way back to the 60s by both parties. In a way, it's trying to overcome the natural, electoral process as it should be.
That's right. And I think for those people that you just talked about, they're trying to drive the election, but they're not going to decide the election. The election is going to be decided on the margins. And what I just want to say around that is that people who identify as one political party or the other, I think the fundamental issues at stake in this election are not actually political. I mean, this is actually foundational. There are foundational questions about our country that are really the deciding, it should be, hopefully, the deciding issues of this election. And like we've been talking about today, the fundamental rights of liberty, and how we function together as a society is what's at stake. It's not actually, there's been an overlay of politics put on top of it. But that core group of people that you're talking about that want to drive a government that serves their needs and interests, it's actually not ultimately about whether you're Republican or Democrat. So it's like we talk about the hardcore Republicans are never going to vote for a Democrat. It's actually, Liz Cheney endorsing Kamala Harris shows that we're in a moment that you say is a really important moment because it's actually beyond a political moment.
Yeah,
it's actually there's actually more fundamental questions.
It's not just her; it's hundreds.
Yeah,
hundreds of former security advisors and so forth. It's like a huge shout saying, "Folks, wake up! Look at what you're buying. This is really corrupt," and it is. It is. They're revealing that he's had up to 5 or more personal conversations with Putin since he's been out of office. This is a basic violation of the law.
It should be. That absolutely should be because Putin is actually, love him or hate him, he's brilliant and he knows how to manipulate. He is a puppeteer of the highest order, and Trump is the easiest little puppet for him. It's like in his sleep he could manipulate Trump. So the fact that they've had 5 conversations since he's been out of office, I guarantee you that's all that's gone on in those conversations.
I wonder if there are any notes. When you have conversations with political leaders, you have note takers taking there to make a record of exactly what these conversations are, because they're incredibly important. What's being said and what's being promised and what's being, this. Well,
we're going. So listen. We still have a few more weeks.
We're going to be talking 2 more times, perhaps 1 or 2 more times.
Yeah.
And then the post-op.
We're going to have a post-op. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have a post-op. So we will do that. I am. So I'm looking forward. I'm glad that we're together, and whoever's watching, you're not alone. Nope. We're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. So,
Here's the thing. What has kept me going, if you look back, I mean, this is going back 40 years ago that I ran for president, that I filed a class action lawsuit in the Supreme Court on behalf of the people. I mean, I've been at this for a long time, and I continue to believe in us. I continue to believe in our inherent goodness as to who we are. And wherever I have gone in this country, in every town, in every place, I find people who just really love their children.
Yeah.
They want a better life for their children. And Joann, I find that wherever I go in the world. Every culture, every place, that's the same goal of everybody. Really, us as a humanity is a better world for our children. And
to take an
that's
honest,
it. And that's it, folks. Wake up. We are at a crisis here, and your vote's important. It really
Yeah.
truly is. And with that, I'll say always, if Transforming America. Not that I'm selling the books because they're for free. You go to williamjohncox.com, williamjohncox.com. And if you're interested in some of the aspects of Mindkind that we've talked about here today, there's another website where my Gift of Mind series of books can all be accessed, again, for free. And that's mindkind.info. And if you have any curiosities about the Voters' Bill of Rights and the things we've talked about that, and including the rights of liberty, you can go to thevote.io. Thevote.io is a website where you can go there and obtain information about that, and even cast your vote for the Voters' Bill of Rights if you like it. But other than that, here we are, back where we often are. And as we
clink,
say, clink. Here's to the people.
the people, may
their
their consent to be governed never be taken for granted.
Yes.
All right, William.
Take care. Good to see you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.